Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello dear students, welcome to another lecture. In this class, we are going to begin with the second chapter of Class 12 Alternative English Nagaland Board, which is Knowledge and Wisdom. So this chapter or this essay, I would say, written by Bertrand Russell is basically his opinions about how knowledge and wisdom are two different things. He talks about the fact that one may possess a very good knowledge about things, but the wisdom to apply that knowledge, the wisdom to decide what is correct, what is not correct, the wisdom to be sensible, in order to make the correct decisions in life is what is more important than just having the knowledge. In this essay written by Bertrand Russell, we are going to come across the instances, the examples that he has taken of many renowned personalities, and he's told us that one may possess knowledge, but if you do not have the wisdom to do something, then it might have very damaging consequences. The result of it can be very negative. So we'll see what the author has to share about his opinion. So first, let us read something about the author. So Bertrand Russell, a famous British philosopher, mathematician, educator, and social and political reformer. He was born on 18th May 1872. Russell received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950 and is said to be one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. In this essay written in 1954, so this essay that we are going to read was written by Russell in 1954. Russell makes the case that knowledge and wisdom do not always go hand in hand. That means that it is not important that if one has knowledge, then one is wise, one has wisdom also. And this can have damaging consequences. The result, the outcome of it might be quite damaging and negative on a person. Giving examples of great leaders, Russell insists that wisdom must be an integral part of education. Integral, a very important part of the education. To have knowledge yet to lack wisdom in Russell's eyes is to miss the true purpose of life, as only wisdom can prevent the misuse of knowledge and make it beneficial tool for the humankind. So in this essay, he has very strongly contested and defended the fact that one may have knowledge. But if that wisdom is lacking, then that knowledge is also of no use. Okay, so let us begin with the essay. He says, most people would agree that although our age far surpasses all previous ages in knowledge, there has been no correlative increase in wisdom. But agreement cases as soon as we attempt to define wisdom and consider means of promoting. I want to ask first what wisdom is and what can be done to teach it. So he says that every person is going to agree nowadays that, our age, it surpasses all previous ages when it comes to knowledge. Surpasses means the present age, the current generation of people, the current, generation of youth, that is much higher and much better than the previous ages or the previous time. but there has been no correlative increase in wisdom. Although the knowledge of the people is certainly better, but the wisdom has not increased. Correlated, simultaneous. So with the knowledge, the wisdom of the people has not increased. But agreement ceases as soon as we attempt to define wisdom. Ceases is to a pause, it pauses. So one stops agreeing with you when we attempt to define wisdom. The moment we define what wisdom is, the agreement is going to stop. The people who agree with you, who are with you in this condition, are going to not agree onto that. And the writer says that before I talk about this topic further, I want to ask what wisdom is and what can be done to teach wisdom to the people. So he says, there are, I think, several factors that contribute to wisdom. Of these, I should put first a sense of proportion. The capacity to take account of all the important factors in a problem and to attach to each its due weight. This has become more difficult than it used to be owing to the extent and complexity for the specialized knowledge required of various kinds of technicians. Suppose, for example, that you are engaged in research in a scientific medicine. The work is difficult and likely to absorb the whole of your intellectual energy. You have no time to consider the effect which your discoveries or inventions may have outside the field of medicine. So, the writer tells us that there are several factors that contribute, that add on to one's wisdom. And of these, I should put first a sense of proportion. The first thing that the author feels is very important when it comes to wisdom is a sense of proportion. Sense of proportion means, the ability to weigh things, to measure what is more important in one situation and what can be ignored for the time being. Okay, so this ability to decide what is to be done right now and what can be done maybe later. So this is something which comes first according to the author. He says the capacity to take account of all the important factors in a problem. When you are capable of knowing the different factors that are involved in a problem and to attach each its due weight and to decide how high or low one factor may be. Okay, there may be multiple problems that you would be dealing with, but every problem has a weight. It has a proportion. So to be able to decide that is what, according to the author, is the first step of being wise. He says, this has become more difficult than it used to be owing to the extent and complexity for the specialized knowledge required of various kinds of technicians. So he says that nowadays this has become more difficult than it used to be. Owing to means because of the extent, that is the limit and the complexity of the specialized knowledge which is required. One needs to have every specialization, one needs to have, I can say, the specialization in every field to a great extent to understand the minute, the small details of the problems that you might be dealing with. Suppose, for example, that you are engaged in research of scientific medicine. So you are a part of scientific medicine and the research related to it. The work is difficult and is likely to absorb the whole of your intellectual energy. Intellectual energy means it actually takes away the entire brain processing of yours. This is something which is a very tedious task. You have no time to consider the effect which your discoveries or inventions may have outside the field of medicine. So you devote so much of your mind in making and researching about the medicine that you hardly get time to analyze what effect that your medicine will have on the outside world. You succeed, let us say, as modern medicine has succeeded in enormously lowering the infant death rate, not only in Europe and America, but also in Asia and Africa. So the writer says, let us suppose, since this is just a hypothetical example, this is just, a supposition that we are making. So he says, let us assume that the medicine that you made has succeeded. It was successful in enormously to a huge extent. So your medicine, it lowered the infant death rate. The death rate among the kids below the age of 1 year. So your medicine very successfully lowered this rate. It brought this rate down, not only in Europe and America, but also in countries like Asia and Africa. Since ours is, Asia is basically a developing continent. We all know that. So this has the entirely unintended result of making the food supply inadequate and lowering the standard of living in the most populous parts of the world. So when this happens, this has the entirely unintended result. Unintended, something that you did not think of, something that you did not see coming, okay? Of making the food supply inadequate and lowering the standard of living in most populous parts of the country. Obviously, in order to improve the death rate among the infant, the medicine would not only work alone. The food supply, standard of living, it also has to be worked upon. To take an even more spectacular example, which is on everybody's mind at the present time, you study the composition of atom from a disinterested desire for knowledge, and incidentally place in the hands of powerful lunatics the means of destroying the human race. In such ways, the pursuit of knowledge may become harmful unless it is combined with wisdom. And wisdom in the sense of comprehensive vision is not necessarily present in specialists in the pursuit of knowledge. Now, what does he say? He gives us a spectacular example, a broader example which everyone would be able to understand because it concerns us all. He says that you study the composition of atoms, okay, from a disinterested desire for knowledge. So you are studying what an atom is composed of, but your knowledge, your desire to be aware of everything, to get the complete knowledge about is very disinterested. You are not fully interested in being a part of this knowledge, you are not fully interested to make this knowledge work. You were quite, ready to just go through it superficially rather than getting into the depths of the thing. He says, and after you have studied everything, you've researched about an atom and the composition of the atom, you incidentally place it in the hands of powerful lunatics. Lunatics, those people who are crazy, those people who are mad and they want to destroy the human race, the terrorists, let's say. So you just handed over your research, your composition of the atom to people who are mad and who want to bring the human population to an end. Although you did that incidentally, you did not do it purposely, but you did end up doing it. Why? Because you did not use your wisdom at that time. In such ways, The pursuit of knowledge may become harmful unless it is combined with wisdom. So this is how the writer says that unless and until your knowledge, your capability to be knowledgeable is combined with being wise. And wisdom, in the sense of comprehensive vision, is not necessarily present in the specialist in the pursuit of knowledge. And he says that when we talk about a comprehensive vision, comprehensive means something which is considered as a whole. Okay. So when we talk about those people who we consider to be knowledgeable, it is not important that these people are going to be wise as well. So one may be knowledgeable, you study, you research about the composition of atom, but you are not wise. And you hand over that composition to people who have evil minds and may end up destroying human beings from the face of the earth. So this is how, if knowledge is not used with wisdom, it may be very harmful. Let us move ahead. Comprehensiveness alone, however, is not enough to constitute wisdom. There must be also a certain awareness of the ends of human life. This may be illustrated by the study of history. Many eminent historians have done more harm than good because they viewed facts through the distorting medium of their own passions. Hegel had a philosophy of history which did not suffer from any lack of comprehensiveness, since it started from the earliest times and continued into indefinite future. But the chief lesson of history which he sought to inculcate was that from the year AD 400 down to his own time, Germany had been the most important nation and the standard bearer of progress in the world. Perhaps one could stretch the comprehensiveness that constitutes wisdom to include not only intellect, but also feeling. It is by no means uncommon to find men whose knowledge is wide, but whose feelings are narrow. Such men lack what I call wisdom. So he moves ahead and he says, comprehensiveness is not enough to constitute wisdom. Comprehensiveness, to have a holistic view in your mind, does not mean that you have wisdom in yourself. There must be certain awareness of the ends of the human life. The human life, you need to know where there should be a pause, where one needs to pause and not seek anything, not wish for anything, nor have a desire for anything. He says that this can very well be illustrated, can very well be presented by the history of the study of history. There were many prominent or eminent, many powerful historians. They have done more harm to the country than good because they always viewed at something through the distorting medium of their own passions. Because they always thought about their passions, their desires, their wishings first. And through those wishings or desires, they hoped to fulfill the other wishes, So whatever achievement they wanted in life or whatever they wished to do in life, that was always connected with what they wanted to have for themselves in their lives. Hegel had a philosophy of history which did not suffer from any lack of comprehensiveness, since it started from the earliest times and continued to indefinite future. When we talk about history is something that began in the past, the earliest of times. We call the arrival and the time when early man used to be there as history. The time when there were, people who had started developing into human beings, that was history. Harappan civilization, that was history. Then the Mughal era was history. Then, even the time of the independence, 1947 was history. So, history is something which is indefinite in nature. It will begin in the past, but it is going to continue till indefinite time. So he says that the chief lesson that history, which he sought to inculcate, was from the year 400, 8400, down to his own time. So according to him, the most important lesson that history taught him was the duration 8400 to the time, to his own time, in which Germany had been the most important nation. And the standard bearer of world in the progress. Standard bearer of progress in the world means that Germany was the standard. Germany was basically the benchmark or was an inspiration for the other countries in the world when it came to progressing. Perhaps one could stretch the comprehensiveness that constitutes wisdom to include not only intellect but also feeling. But we all know Germany is very well known for Hitler. We all know that it was Hitler who was there in Germany, and Hitler is considered to be the most inhuman person in the history of the world. So he says that, when we talk about being comprehensive, comprehensiveness also talks about feelings. Not only intellect, not only your knowledge, your wisdom, your information, that you have in your mind, but also your feelings. And it is by no means uncommon to find men whose knowledge is wide, but their feelings are narrow. So they are very knowledgeable, but when it comes to their feelings, it's very narrow. As I gave you the example of Adolf Hitler. And such men also, according to our author, Russell, lacked wisdom. It is not only in public ways, but in private life, equally that wisdom is needed. So, we not only need wisdom in the public ways, but in our private lives, in our personal lives also. It is needed in the choice of ends to be pursued and in emancipation from personal prejudice. So one needs wisdom when one has to choose something, choice of ends. When it comes to choosing, when it comes to making a choice, that is when wisdom plays a very important role. And also the emancipation from personal prejudice. Emancipation means freedom, liberty, and prejudice means bias, discrimination. One needs freedom, one needs wisdom in order to free oneself from biasness. Any sort of biasness that exists in us, in our nature, in our character, that also needs to be got rid of. Even an end which it would be noble to pursue if it were attainable may be pursued unwisely if it is inherently impossible of achievement. So the writer further tells us that, if at the end it would be noble to pursue if it were attainable, may be pursued unwisely. There might be a few choices that you want to opt for, a few things that you want to have in your lives. And achieving those things, attaining those things is also possible for you. Those things are very much in your reach. But then what happens? Unless and until those things are not possible for you to achieve, if you don't choose in a wise manner as to how those things are to be achieved. I want to score first in my class 12, let's say. This is one desire, this is one wish, this is one hope which each one of us has. Achieving this is very much possible. We all know we can achieve that. We need to be very hardworking. We need to be very sincere. We need to learn and to apply our knowledge well, right? So we know that this desire of ours is attainable. It is achievable. But if we choose the path to work hard unwisely, if we do not plan things in a wise manner as to how I am going to study, how much time I am going to devote to each subject, how much revision I require, all these things will only add up to the problems and I would not be able to achieve what I want. So just the fact that what you desire is in your reach is not important. To have that wisdom to make the correct choices and to decide the correct path for yourself to reach up to that goal is equally important. He says that many men in the past ages devoted their lives to a search for the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. Elixir of life, a liquid which is supposed to be very magical. So a liquid with magical qualities. So many men in the past, they devoted their lives, they, spent their lives in search of a philosopher's stone, a magical stone, or maybe a magical drink. No doubt, if they could have found that, they would have conferred great benefits upon mankind. Comfort given, bestowed. So if they would have got that philosopher's stone or the elixir of life, they would surely have done something very big and important for the mankind. But as it was, their lives were wasted. But they simply kept on searching for it, and by searching for it, they ended up wasting their lives. They did not reap anything beneficial in their lives because they were only wasting their time finding those, philosopher's stone as well as the elixir. To descend to less heroic matters, consider the case of two men, Mr. A and Mr. B, who hate each other and through mutual hatred bring each other to destruction. So he gives us another example in order to explain that to descend to less heroic matters. Descend means to come down. Heroic, we are referring to being a hero, being a role model. So coming down to something which is not heroic in nature, he talks about or he explains to us this case study using an example of two men, Mr. A and Mr. B, who hate each other. And through mutual hatred, both of them have equal hatred for each other. That is going to bring to destruction. If they continue to hate each other, they are surely going to lead themselves onto the path of destruction. They are surely not going to be able to achieve anything in life because they are going to spend their whole life in looking for ways and means to destroy each other, to damage each other, to cause harm to each other. Suppose you go to Mr. A and say, why do you hate Mr. B? He will no doubt give you an appalling list of Mr. B's vices, partly true, partly false. Appalling, a huge, list of Mr. B's vices, the errors, the mistakes that Mr. B has done. Some of those will be true, some of them will be false. And now you go to Mr. B. And he will do exactly the same thing. He also is going to say something to you about Mr. B. With an equal admixture of truth and falsehood. Admixture, again, a mixture of both truth as well as falsehood will be found in both A as well as B's statements. Suppose now come back to Mr. A and say, you will be surprised to learn that Mr. B says the same things about you as you say about him. And you go to Mr. B and make a similar speech. The first effect, no doubt, will be to increase their mutual hatred. So when you do something like this, when you go to Mr. A, you tell Mr. A that Mr. B has said this about you, and then you go to Mr. B and say the same thing about Mr. A to him as well. what will happen? The mutual hatred that exists between them is going to increase. Since each will be so horrified by others' injustice, because each one of them will feel that the other is being unjust, is being unfair. They will think that I am correct and why the other person is believing in this manner or thinking about it, and the other way around as well. But perhaps if you have patience and sufficient persuasiveness, convincing power. So if you have patience and you have the power to convince, you may succeed in convincing each that the other has only the normal share of human wickedness. That every human being is wicked. This isn't anything which is such a big deal to fight about. Everyone has something positive, something negative in them, and that their enmity is harmful to both of them. If you are able to do it, then you have instilled some fragment of wisdom. Instilled, you have put in some wisdom in the other person. If you are being able to make the other person understand that this is just a part of human nature and nothing bad or cruel is there, then that is when you showcase your wisdom. I think the essence of wisdom is emancipation as far as possible from the tyranny of the here and now. We cannot help the egoism of our senses. Sight and sound and touch are bound up with our own bodies and cannot be impersonal. So he says the essence of wisdom, essence, the importance, the value of being wise is to be free, is emancipation, is being liberal from the tyranny of here and now. Tyranny means this rule, the dominating power of what is inside you. You have to be free from that. We cannot help the egoism of our senses. We all have egos. There is some or the other egoism which is involved in each one of them. Sight and sound and touch, what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we speak are bound up with our bodies and cannot be impersonal. You cannot say that what I am saying is totally fair and I am not being biased towards myself, because that is not the case. It is my tongue, it is my eyes, it is my ears, and they are going to listen and speak and see what somewhere down the line I want. Our emotions start similarly from ourselves, and this way we all know that our emotions also start from ourselves. An infant feels hunger or discomfort and is unaffected except by his own physical condition. A small child might be hungry, might not be comfortable, and the only effect that the child will have on himself or herself is of his own physical condition. If the child does not feel good physically, the child will know it. Gradually, with the years, his horizon widens, and in proportion as his thoughts and feelings become less personal and less concerned with his own physical state, he achieves growing wisdom. And gradually, slowly and slowly, when the child grows up, the horizon widens. Horizon, your thought process, it becomes bigger and bigger, when you grow up. And then obviously your thoughts also change, your feelings also change, and you become less personal. You start considering about, something from every perspective. Rather than just thinking about yourself, you start taking into consideration a wider perspective. This is, of course, a matter of degree. No one can view the world with complete impartiality. We all know that if you are looking at the world, there has to be some sort of biasness in your opinions. You cannot be totally impartial. And if anyone could, he would hardly be able to remain alive. And if there is somebody who exists, a person who is impartial and who can look at the world in an unbiased manner, then in that case, that person cannot remain alive for a long time. That person is bound to make a lot of enemies in his or her life. But it is possible to make a continual approach towards impartiality, on the one hand, by knowing things somewhat remote in time or space, and on the other hand, by giving to such things their due weight in our feelings. The writer says, the only thing that is possible for each one of us is to continue to become impartial. Okay, you cannot be totally impartial, but with every stage in your life, you can just think of being impartial. And obviously, if you need to be impartial, if you need to be wise, you need to devote time to yourself. You need to devote space to yourself, and also you need to devote feelings, time, weight to your feelings as well. You need to decide how much to think of, what to feel, how to feel, and then gradually you'd be able to have a control over those feelings so that you are not being partial with something. It is this approach towards impartiality that constitutes growth in wisdom. And it is because of this approach that one has towards impartiality that one grows in wisdom. Now there's a question here which says, does an infant grow in wisdom? So we have read in this paragraph that an infant obviously is going to grow in wisdom with years, with age. When one grows, the horizon of a person broadens. A person is less concerned about oneself, about one's physical state, and starts considering the feelings, the emotions of the other people. So this is how an infant grows to become wise. So with this, my dear students, I'm going to pause here, and then in my next video, I shall continue with this chapter and discuss the back exercises pertaining to it. So I shall see you all now in my next lecture. Thank you.